Hi guys, it's Kirsty. Today's video is about our perspective and gratitude in regards to OCD and OCD recovery. But firstly, just a reminder to click on subscribe below so you can make sure that you're getting your daily updates on the videos as they are released on the channel. So when we start therapy, whether that's for anxiety, depression, etc., there is quite often a large focus on trying to help us change the automatic kind of negative bias that our minds tend to have by looking at gratitude and some positivity. And while you don't want to be forcing positivity or anything like that, because that goes against the whole idea of acceptance. A change in perspective to look at the things that you can be grateful for and feel a bit better about can take the edge off your OCD suffering massively once you start believing that. One of the things that's incredibly unhelpful with our OCD recovery is kind of having self-pity. And as I've spoken about before, believing that it's not fair that we have OCD. But if we can look at the things that we do have in our lives, it can start to bring down the level of suffering and change our perspective on it to allow us to come to the point where we can accept having OCD itself. And this in no means takes away from, it's not trying to take away from how much we will have suffered previously with OCD. It's not suggesting that OCD is fine. Actually, it's no big deal. It's not. It had previously been listed in the top 10 most debilitating conditions several years ago, which has changed now because we have greater treatment for OCD and recovery we know is possible. But that does show how difficult it is to have OCD, and this is why it's helpful to us, because it's so hard having OCD and it does take such a toll on our bodies, our minds, how tired we feel. This is why it is good for us if we can change our perspective and look at some of the positives and feel grateful for the things we do have. For example, for those of us who suffer from OCD, but we have good physical health, the fact that we can move around, the fact that we can eat, the fact that we can exercise, we can get out and about and see things is huge. It's a huge thing to be grateful for. There are people who there are children who can't walk, who have never skipped or ran or played it with their friends or anything like that. So for those of us who are able-bodied, it's something to be hugely grateful for. So it's good to kind of look at these things. It certainly was helpful for me because I struggled to accept having OCD. Overall, I thought it was incredibly unfair that not only had I gone through losing my mum in my 20s, I then sort of realised that I've got this this condition that technically isn't curable. Oh my God, how unfair. But actually, firstly, examining, as I've discussed before, fairness as a bit of a myth anyway. It's not really a thing, and sort of busting that idea for myself. Then looking at the things that I do have, to be able-bodied, I can exercise, I can get out in the garden. It's one of my passions is gardening, so I can look at the colours and I can smell things, and there's so much to be grateful for. And really, if you can get to the point where you truly believe that, it makes OCD feel a lot more acceptable, and therefore it can bring down fear and also the feelings of despair and depression around having anxiety and OCD. So it's extremely helpful. Also, what is useful is looking at feeling grateful that we have OCD in this day and age and not 100 years ago, because firstly, there's the fact that we have access to the treatment and we have the knowledge about treatment that we didn't have previously. People would end up having to live with the condition. Secondly, living in the day and age we do with people being more open-minded about, you know, certain themes that would have been taboo 200 years ago are no longer quite as, you know, no longer quite as taboo. So it's not, that's not to say people don't still get stuck on these themes, but these certain, you know, things are, and rightfully so, acceptable amongst society now. For example, you know, gay marriage, about, you know, quite rightly so, but 100, 200 years ago, this kind of thing wouldn't have been acceptable. So somebody suffering from HOCD would, you know, would have probably written themselves off as a person because society was. Whereas now people are much more enlightened about this kind of thing, and it's people are allowed to be who they are, which is fantastic, and it's how it should be. So we are lucky in that respect, and it's really important for us to acknowledge that. You know, being where we are, there's a lot of negative talk about social media, you know, not being great for the way people feel about themselves. However, for us guys, having social media and, you know, having YouTube channel like this where we can access information about OCD, this is great. This is incredible for us. I mean, this sort of thing is how I realised that I had OCD, because I had access to the internet and I could read up about, you know, intrusive thoughts about your relationship and things like that. You know, because of that, I am still in the relationship with the love of my life, rather than walking away from it because of anxiety. So to be grateful for any sort of, you know, anything that's enabled you to, like technology, to take steps forward in your OCD recovery, or, you know, to be grateful for any conversation that you've had with someone that's allowed you to take steps in your recovery. It's acknowledging even the smallest of things that can really help. And while I recommend keeping an eye on this to ensure it doesn't become compulsive, you know, just taking note of small things each day that you're grateful for. So for me, even when I'm in a foul mood and, you know, having a real crappy day, my dog makes me smile every day. I'm just so grateful for him. And my partner, the little thoughtful things that he does, and I'm so grateful for that. And my brother, who really makes me laugh, and you know, thoughtful friends. Or, you know, I'm just grateful for my bed, to be honest. My bed is so comfortable. It's just so great. I'm really grateful for it every night. Little things like, for me, I put lavender oil on my pillow at night. I'm really grateful that I know about lavender oil. You know, don't get me wrong. It doesn't, you know, it's not always easy to, you know, if you're at the height of your OCD suffering, it's very hard to see the wood for the trees sometimes. But to try and acknowledge these small things to be grateful for can really help your brain to sort of sharpen up and notice things, you know, nicer things. Say when you're out and about and you notice a colour of a leaf, that's amazing, and you start, you know, any small thing that you start naturally noticing like that, that's good, that even it can take your attention away from the negative ruminations that might be going on in your mind, even if it's just for 1 second, that's great. And with that in mind also, instead of comparing ourselves to other people and what we're not doing compared to what other people are doing, what I found really useful also is just celebrating the smallest breakthroughs that we have for ourselves and being grateful for ourselves. Be grateful to yourself that you did that exposure the other day that was really, really difficult, or be grateful for yourself when, you know, 6 months ago you spent half an hour a day working on your disputing of beliefs. You know, be grateful for yourself because that's led you to be able to have what you have right now, for example. So, like, celebrate the things that you do as well, and the small achievements. Doesn't matter how small. As I said, OCD is so hard, and living normal, you know, when you're in the thick of it, going about your daily tasks, just making dinner, doing your washing, all of that's really, really hard. So if you're having a really bad day with OCD and you got up out of bed, you walked to work, you worked for the day, you weren't at your most productive, you went home, you made yourself dinner, you did your washing up. Celebrate that, because it was hard and you did it. So I think that's another thing to get used to doing as well. That's really, really helpful. It really, really helps with the unconditional self-acceptance piece, the fact that you're celebrating your own small victories every day, rather than comparing it like versus somebody, one of your mates who, you know, is having a good time at the moment. They don't have OCD. There's, as far as you know, nothing else negative going on in their life. It kind of seems okay. Don't compare yourself to what they're doing and what they might think is, you know, good achievements for the day. Live life by your own standards for that day and celebrate your own good stuff. And the more you get into the habit of doing that, the more, you know, you feel a little boost in the small things that you do, and you feel more motivated to do more of it. But thank you ever so much for watching. I'm going to leave it there. I hope it has been of some use to you, to look at our perspective on OCD and how, you know, being grateful for the things that we do have, and the time we live in can be very helpful for us in bringing down our own levels of distress about having OCD and our suffering. I would also like to mention that there is a book that I will talk about in another video, called Man's Search for Meaning, which I feel is relevant to this kind of thing. But I will save that for another video. Thank you for watching. Bye.